you are ever in a jungle that goes quiet, run. Or the spider will end up crawling all over me. The evil spirits of the rainforest, raining poisonous caterpillars. We're just staring. How about he makes the recording. Sabi, say hi to the camera. Oh, mi amor, thank you. My lipstick. Say hi. Say oi. Okay, thank you. Mister, you can go now. Thank you. Okay, let's go.
1, 2, 3 meses después, 4, 5, 6, yeah, 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 yeah. 7, 8, 9, tú me estás gustando más. 10, 11 meses, estamos locos de verdad. 12 meses sí quiero más. 12 meses sí quiero más. 12 meses ven pa' acá, quedamos para más. Quedamos para más.
Hola, I'm Dr. Rosa, National Geographic Explorer, UNESCO awarded Indigenous scientist, founder of Amazon Research International, and author of The Spirit of the Rainforest. And this is the only place on the internet where I will be sharing raw, unfiltered opinions on our modern scientific world and the traditional knowledge of our ancestors. So come explore with me.
Para más, quedamos para más.
So today we'll be talking about one of the most commonly asked questions that I receive. Am I ever scared in the Amazon rainforest? Or have we ever had any scary experiences while doing our work? And I do have one moment that comes to mind. I do need to give you a little background as to how that day even came to be. Me and my team work on native bees in the Peruvian Amazon that are known as stingless bees. Beautiful creatures. If you have never heard about them, please go look them up. We'll put some photos here. They're bees that literally cannot sting you. They have other ways to protect themselves, but that's a story for another time. The whole premise of how we work is by respecting and combining traditional knowledge of how our ancestors used to interact and work with native bees alongside modern scientific tools so that we can study them, protect them, and regenerate them. And early on, when we started this project, we realized that there was something quite unique about these bees, and that is, it is really difficult to find them. Most of them nest inside hollow trees, and so your only clue to find them in the wild is to identify a little hole, a little entry that they have made in typically a giant, tall, old tree. So it is more difficult than looking for a needle in a haystack, because you are literally trying to find that while being surrounded by thousands of tall, thick trees. And statistically, I think it's very, very unlikely that we find more than just a couple by chance, unless we follow traditional knowledge. And we learn from our indigenous colleagues that they had learned from their grandfathers that one finds stingless bees by going into the rainforest at night. You go to look not for something you can see, but for something you can hear. Because in the evening, all the bees go back to their hive, and because they are inside a hollow tree, their buzzing really gets elevated, as if someone has literally turned the radio on. And so you need to go in silence and very mindful and very attentive to all the details and sounds, so that hopefully you can catch that buzzing sound that will guide you to that wild hive at a point, then we can take all of our measurements and do all of the science work that we've been doing to protect these bees. Of course, that means going into the rainforest at night. Now, mind me, I have spent a lot of my childhood in the Amazon. We have been in the rainforest at night many times, but it is different than just hanging out around in the evening, than going deep as you can literally trek to look for bees. That means going into virgin paths, many of which have not been explored in modern times. And ideally in a small team so that you can better hear the buzzing of the bees. And so the first time that we did this with me, our Indigenous colleagues said, okay, Rosa, let's come bring you out so you can see what this is all about. And that way we could see how best to adapt our science technology to these indigenous methods. And so, of course, it means I need to come in along, which I was so excited for. And now it has become really difficult to find stingless bees, so we knew we may have to trek hours and hours on end, sometimes 6, 7, 9 hours into the night, with the hopes of finding one single hive. So we were ready. I had all my gear. We had, lamps and headlights. I had my rubber boots to protect from any unexpected encounter with snakes and so forth. And we were with one of the community members that specializes at guarding the rainforest at night. So he is quite well versed at identifying the wildlife that tends to come out in this area, even though it may not be quite obvious to the rest of the world when you're traversing these spaces. And this colleague turned around and said, you guys are doing your science, I'm gonna be here guiding you through these virgin paths. We of course have to be very careful because there are cats around. And if you ever hear someone from the Amazon tell you there are cats around, they don't mean tiny little kittens. Cats, it's a general slang term to refer to anything from, yes, small cats to ocelots to the mighty jaguars, okay? And so we knew that jaguars, are common to that area. But then he turned around and said, but that's not the most dangerous thing in his opinion. And he kind of referred to the idea that he is more scared about what he refers to as the evil spirit of the rainforest.
Noi hamin sata shita nakariya. Isame tonisa, isame. Kanta nai charisa, eiroya piña piña tanakero. Itai, tirariron kari, soririn karani, kapiro manchai. Kota pain tanah kiasa Yama yama semporo ta pain tanah kenisa Koshiri Yama yama tanah kerosa Ibo choki nenisa Iwe yota kota pain tanah kenisa.
But anyways, he said, if I ask you guys to stop, you need to freeze. Literally do not move, because we could be looking at either of these threats, as he was referring to, either a large predator, that we are entering their territory. They may not necessarily be happy about that. or these more mystical creatures that he was holding deep fear for. And so he just said to follow his lead on that. So anyways, so there we go. We started to go into the evening. um, and I have been in this rainforest in the upper Amazon before. Actually, navigating the Amazon at night is one of my favorite moments because so many scents come to life, and honestly, so many sounds as well. So my very first thought was, how in heaven are we actually gonna distinguish the buzzing of the bees? Because so much wildlife really awakens at night, from crickets and frogs, some owls. Sometimes you can hear monkeys as well, you name it. But there I go, of course, trusting my Indigenous colleagues and leaders. And we have been traversing and trekking for multiple hours already. To be honest, I had lost count because we knew we were in for a ride, and so at some point you kind of get into the feeling and the groove of almost like a meditation state for me, which is you have to be so present, you really cannot be thinking of anything else because we're entering such thin spaces. We have to watch out where we're putting our foot next, what we may accidentally be touching around us, because there are all sorts of creatures, including some that are very, very, very poisonous, like a little guy called the killer caterpillar. And of course, you have to be attentive of what is in front of you, because sometimes spiders love to make webs that are really difficult to see, very easy to miss, or things that may be falling from the leaves that are in and around you, like bullet ants, which you definitely don't want to be stung by. So I feel like I entered into a sort of a groove. I am in that mode. We are of course attentive to the sounds, but we are in this wheel of attentiveness around us. And we were at some point in some sort of like a hill, and I did remember it feeling it kind of muddy, so we had to be honest, tense our muscles quite a lot. And I remember we even had to get in a line. There was not enough space for two of us to walk side by side. We were a team, I think, of 6 at the time. And so we were one behind the other. I think I was kind of in the middle or almost close to the back. And then suddenly, our Indigenous colleague, who had been silent the entire time, all of those hours, while the rest of us were chatting here and there, he just goes and says, "Para!" Like, stop. And I have to be honest, my heart froze at that time because he already had warned us that if he did say that at any time, we had to follow exactly as he said, because he could mean quite a real threat. Anyways, I just remember at that moment trying to be as logical as possible and remembering what some friends have told me about what to look for if you do may have jaguars around. Because they are the larger predator, everything tends to quiet down. And if you are ever in a jungle that goes quiet, run.
Noi hama, noi hamin sata shita nakariya. Isame tonisa, isame. Kanta nai charisa. Hey roya piña piña tanakero.
No, it's okay. We can keep going. But kept, shining his light toward that area. And he actually taught us a really cool technique, which is if you have a headlamp, you want to click it and move it, because that can really confuse whatever you may have around. So nothing happened really that day, but it was such a moment of feeling something so deep fall in my stomach, of the reality of what can go wrong. And when we came back, it really led to such incredible stories throughout the rest of the evening and into the next day about the evil spirits that they mentioned they were even more afraid of than the larger predators. And that has really stuck with me ever since, because there is one that they mention as the Chuyachaki. It is known as this mythical creature that it's small and chubby and has one foot bigger than the other, or so people describe. Um, but the way my colleagues talked about this creature was that they have had experiences, and many of their neighbors and other communities kind of agree that they believe this evil spirit can turn into someone you love and confuse you and call you to go to areas where you shouldn't be going. And one of my colleagues said that he was really deep into the rainforest in one evening, really far from home, and he heard his daughter with a clear as the sky calling him into an area even farther and even deeper. And he just remembers feeling so cold in the bones and feeling kind of an eerie sense around him, quite parallel to what my colleagues have described how they have felt when they eventually learned there was a jaguar around or chasing them. But that concept of hearing someone that you love calling you, I we can try to provide any explanation to that, but regardless, it generates this sense of deep fear, and that is one objective truth we cannot deny. The person that is alone in the middle of the rainforest happens to have this, call it instinct or innate fear that just arises, whether that is this evolutionary kind of reaction that we have developed when we sense danger and we are alone in a deep area, and it basically activates our fight or flight and we have to leave, or whatever it is, that is a feeling. And it's typically associated as a spirit that is both mischievous but also kind of protecting the rainforest. So if you came into your trekking with some negative thoughts or with some problems that you haven't resolved, or with any kind of feeling of, you know, jealousy or something that is not considered a positive feeling, then that spirit would emerge. And so what my colleagues do is they actually carry some protection because they are convinced that this really helps, including Amazonian tobacco, which is like a stronger version of your nicotine, some garlic and some salt in their pockets. So even that night before we went into our hike, they did give me some of these elements to carry, and I had them deep in my pocket. The legend says that if your tobacco is consumed as if someone had smoked it by the end of the night, then is that the evil spirit took that offering and then, decided to let you go and not take you in. So on film or TV, we typically see people being more afraid of the larger predators, anaconda, jaguars, the caimans. But being fully honest, what terrifies me the most are the tiny creatures that you do not see coming and that are extremely dangerous. It has happened to me more than once that I am trekking through the rainforest, and if I happen to be distracted for a second and not pay attention not only to what is below my feet but right in front of me, I might miss a carefully constructed spider web with a very, very dangerous spider right in the middle. And that whole spider web will get so intertwined with my hair that I am sure the spider will end up crawling all over me. Another creature that I think I'm afraid of as well are caterpillars. There are some that can be small but have these very long spikes that contain toxins that could either cause internal hemorrhage or make your entire arm go numb for days. And so it disrupts your nervous system to different extents. And they're just very chill. They're not looking to do any harm to you, but sometimes they keep falling from the leaves right on our shoulders or our backs. We have to be very careful on how we remove them. I once almost ran directly with my face into one. And so that is another thing that I think people need to be mindful of, raining poisonous caterpillars. So that was our conversation on things that I am legitimately afraid of in the rainforest. So tell me, what would you be fearful of? The evil spirits, the larger predators, or these tiny but very dangerous creatures? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time for our next conversation.